remember the conduit?
Oh, I remember.
Hey, you remember Zack and Wiki? Oh, I love to remember Zack and Wiki. Hey, you remember Muramasa the Demon Blade? Oh, I remember. You remember playing it on the Wii? No, I don't remember. I played it on the Vita.
Some games are able to stay relevant to this day and even manage to inspire huge cult followings. Some are remembered for the wrong reasons, but for others, the public doesn't realize what they had until it's lost to time. And today, we're giving some much needed love to the titles that history forgot. What do I define as a forgotten game? Well, for this list, I'm referring to those that were hyped beyond all belief when they first came out and were generally well received in their prime, but then just kind of vanished from the public consciousness. The modern gamer might not even remember these titles, or may at the very least have very faint memories of it. If they're lucky enough, these lost gems can hopefully stir up an, "Oh yeah, I remember that game. Whatever happened to it?" whenever they're brought up.
I apologize for all the egg puns I'm about to do.
Well, the first game to crack onto this list is none other than the forgotten Sega classic, Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. This excellent game was originally created by Sonic Team because one person thought, hey, let's make a 3D platformer that has no Sonic and lots of chickens. You play as Billy Hatcher, who looks like someone who cosplayed Sonic and thought he was a chicken, as he and his friends explore a new world trying to save it from an eternal night by freeing people from giant eggs. On release, the game got pretty okay reviews, averaging in the high 70s, but it was still pretty popular since it had Sonic and Sonic Team backing it up, especially after Sonic Adventure 2's release. And also, I remember there being a lot of commercials for this game, but as you can see with a lot of titles on this list, interest with this game just went sunny side up. Due to poor sales, Sega decided it didn't want a sequel and the game was lost to infamy. A PC port was made for the game, but it was only released in Europe, pretty much scrambling the franchise as a whole. Nowadays, only the most hard-boiled fans will still play this game, either for nostalgia or speedrunning. And it is expensive, going for $150 on Amazon, meaning most people might still need to poach it to enjoy it. Billy Hatcher himself has appeared in future games like Sega and Sonic All-Stars Racing, but besides that, not a chirp from the kid in the chicken suit.
That physically hurt to record.
The original Xbox exploded onto the scene back in 2001, firmly establishing Microsoft as a new contender in the console wars. The cause of its success was incredibly simple. Halo Combat Evolved. The impressive graphics, engrossing story, and futuristic gameplay put Master Chief on the map as one of gaming's biggest mascots. On the other hand, the same cannot be said for Microsoft's other attempt at a mascot, Blinx the Time Sweeper. Blinx and its sequel were fairly decent games in their own right with some fairly interesting innovations. Its time manipulation gameplay was in fact made prior to Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. A few neat puzzles, colorful creative worlds, and fun boss fights didn't hurt either. Unfortunately, this was the 2000s, a time dominated by a glutton of B-grade platformers. Thus, Blinx was swept away in the oversaturation. Boy, Sega can never catch a break with that. Now, when it came to Blinx's viability as a mascot, there was one simple problem. Microsoft had already established itself as a new, mature console, so Blinx didn't really fit the aesthetic nor the brand. While Blinx has since seen a re-release, it's had next to nothing in terms of promotion or fanfare.
When you get down to it, there's only room for one vacuum-wielding hero.
Who's number one now?
Ever wondered what would happen if you made a game based on a movie, based on a graphic novel that was full of video game references? Well, you get Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. Yep, we're talking about this game. For those that don't know, Scott Pilgrim tells of the titular hero, an amateur guitarist who falls in love with a delivery girl and can only date her if he defeats her 7 evil exes. Yeah, that kind of story. I talked about the movie a bit during my top 10 music battles, but the game is more important here. You go through stages as Scott and friends, and the game plays like a classic beat 'em up similar to Streets of Rage or Castle Crashers. In terms of reception, the game got pretty decent reviews, averaging in the low 80s and sold pretty well at the time. So the game was favorable and had a popular movie accompanying it. What happened? Well, unfortunately in 2014, the game was delisted from the online gaming stores, and since there was no physical release, it became unplayable. Well, to be fair, it is still playable, but only if you downloaded it previously. So to get it now, you would have to buy a PS3 or a 360 with the game installed. Yeah, no. For a while, this acted to the game's benefit. It became a cult classic with petitions being made to bring the game back, and even the original graphic novel's creator saying he wanted to bring the game back. But it's been 4 years since those remarks, and nothing's been done. There was a lot of speculation as to why the game was delisted, but it was mostly due to licensing issues among several high-profile companies, so there doesn't seem to be any real chance the game could come back. But for the time it was out, it was a fun game. Too bad that even if people remember it, they won't be able to play it.
Honestly, I blame the companies more than the players for this one. Shows what digital only gets you.
If you've heard of the game studio Remedy Entertainment, you would most likely associate them with their popular Max Payne series. The game I want to talk about, however, is one that they created after Max Payne 2. With more than 5 years spent on development, in 2010 they debuted Alan Wake, a psychological thriller action game. The lead up to the game was no small thing, as prior to the game's release, Microsoft had advertised the heck out of it. There was even a tie-in web series that was showcased on Xbox Live that took place in Bright Falls before the events of the game. A lot of the hype was due to Microsoft co-funding the game's development and snagging the exclusive rights to the game on the Xbox 360. So they advertised in every conceivable location they could, on their web pages, in magazines, on billboards. If you were alive in the late 2000s, you at least knew about this game in passing. At release, the game had already gone gold and was a hit, not just with gamers but with critics too, earning more than 20 awards, and critics praised its original storyline and fast, terrifying gameplay. So what happened to it?
Wait a minute, what happened? What happens next? Come on, let's see the next episode!
You'd think after a success like that Remedy and Microsoft would shoot for a sequel? The game even ended on somewhat of a cliffhanger, so even fans were wondering, what's next? Well, this is where things get muddy. Remedy had fully planned on originally making a sequel, with some DLC planning on being the bridge between them. However, during development, the focus shifted from being a true sequel to then becoming a spin-off, Alan Wake's American Nightmare. After that, development on Alan Wake was postponed in favor of a new IP, Quantum Break, and Remedy CEO Taylor Vertala was quoted as saying, "Any further sequels to Alan Wake would require Microsoft Studios' approval as the publishing rights holder." So, great, the game is stuck in copyright heck then?
Good guess, but actually no.
In 2019, Remedy purchased all rights to Alan Wake, becoming the sole owner of the property, but they'd already been working on their new game, Control. Control itself actually takes place in the same universe as Alan Wake, and even makes multiple references to it. Whether this means that Remedy will go forward with a true sequel remains to be seen. So to summarize, Alan Wake has released to critical and customer acclaim and would spend the next decade fading out quicker than a cheap sparkler bought at a discount fireworks store. All the while, publisher and developer would fight over the property like a child and recently divorced parents, leaving poor Alan without a chance to fully blossom into a larger game series.
Darling, only the good die young.
The No More Heroes franchise, arguably one of the most successful and marketable series ever made by Goichi Suda, or Suda51 as he's known by. But is this really all he has to offer us? I mean, it's not like he's got any other titles under his belt, right?
I'll agree.
This is kind of like the polar opposite of Sega's Sonic fixation. While Sega seems to forget that they have other non-Sonic games, the audience seems to overlook Suda's non-No More Heroes titles, and it's not a short list. It's kind of sad because these lost gems almost all abide by Suda's style of gaming. Crude, gory, and more than a little scandalous. To keep it short, I'll briefly go over 4 of these titles, but I won't be including Let It Die, since as of March 2020, their download count is in the millions. Killer 7 also gets a free pass since it put Suda on the map and became a cult classic. First, there's Lollipop Chainsaw. This thing couldn't take itself seriously if you paid it to. And yet, that's what made the game such a novelty. It's vulgar, it's nonsensical, it's Suda51. While it's said to be one of Grasshopper Manufacture's most successful titles, there's still quite a few who can't overlook the typical gameplay, and the fact they have Terra's Twilight Sparkle voice acting like a total bubble brain.
I never learned to read.
That's just wrong.
Then there's Killer is Dead. This poor game could not catch a break. It was praised in Japan for its visual aesthetics and gameplay, but still suffered a bit from control problems. But that's not the worst part. Western critics ate Killer is Dead alive over the confusing story, poor voice acting, and the gigolo missions. Okay, look, I didn't know how to correctly pronounce that word because I'm sheltered. Shut up. Okay, yeah, not crazy about that last one either, but it still matched Suda51's vision, for better or worse. Shadows of the Damned didn't get much of a fair chance either. While it boasts some amazing audio and keeps you on your toes with the bosses, it suffers from stiff animations, a lack of a New Game Plus function, and the fact that it wasn't No More Heroes or Killer 7. Yeah, cause that's a fair standard. On one hand, it's easy to see why Suda51's non-No More Hero games are overlooked so much. The guy's writing and directing styles aren't exactly kosher with everyone, and unlike No More Heroes, they don't have enough of a franchise to compensate for that. However, it's clear there's a spark of passion with every title, and he makes sure they all match his vision while still offering something unique every time. Really, the only way to judge these games is to just play them yourself. There's no guarantee if you'll love them or hate them, but you'll definitely be in for a unique experience.
Okay, so the next game we're talking about is... Oh, jeez, EA.
When you think of a guy named Dante fights demons from hell with a giant weapon, your first thought is most likely Devil May Cry. Well, we're talking about the other guy. Anyways, the marketing for Dantes Inferno at launch was insane. EA sent multiple tests to critics, including bribing them to incur the deadly sin of greed and sending them boxes that kept playing Never Gonna Give You Up until you smash them with the provided hammer, incurring wrath. They created multiple websites that condemned you to hell and gave you a link to buy the game, and one where they had a game where you steal someone's girlfriend and bring them to hell. Plus, there were several controversies, like when people protested the game calling EA the Antichrist, even though it later came out that EA hired them, or when the International Nanny Association opposed the game because a trophy called Bad Nanny rewarded you for killing childlike demons. Well, after all that, the game came out. It got decent reviews and sold almost 500,000 copies. DLC and an animated short came out that year too. And then nothing. After 2010, no one really talked about the game again. People thought there would be a sequel based on the Purgatory portion of the Divine Comedy, and the game also ended on a cliffhanger. While there were hints of a sequel the next year, nothing concrete came out, and the game disappeared outside of YouTube videos about gaming controversies or YouTube videos about forgotten games. Out of all the games on this list, Dantes Inferno had one of the most intricate marketing campaigns and controversial releases. But like all the games on this list, it didn't go anywhere. Honestly, if the game got a PC release, it would have brought many more gamers to help it resurface and keep afloat, especially with the level editor DLC being of interest to modders. But with Visceral getting the EA kiss of death, that ain't ever happening. It turns out that Tim Schafer, founder of Double Fine Productions and renowned video game writer, loves heavy metal. So around the late 2000s, he decided to combine two of his passions into an epic, cinematic gaming experience. The end result? Brutal Legend. After a bizarre stage accident, Eddie Riggs, the world's best roadie, is transported to the enslaved world of heavy metal. To save this world from eternal bondage, Eddie must traverse through a world and fight back the system using the power of music, his army of shirtless grunts, and an oh-so-generous side helping of... decapitation! Sad to label this as a forgotten game because Brutal Legend did nearly everything right. The graphics are insanely creative and like something out of the most metal album cover. The soundtrack is packed with over 100 tunes and over 75 bands. Some easier on the ears than others. The story's like something out of an actual film, which is to be expected from the guy who brought classics like Full Throttle, Psychonauts, and Grim Fandango to life. And the voice acting? You've got an all-star cast featuring legends like Tim Curry, Ozzy Osbourne, and Jack Black, Mr. Tenacious D himself, and you already know you're in for a good time. There was a lot of heart put into this game as a love letter to metalheads by metalheads. So what happened?
Where did I go wrong? What happened to me?
Unfortunately, there was one major flaw in this passion project: the actual gameplay. It's It's not so much that the game is broken, but it has a really weird combination of hack and slash and real-time strategy style of play, and the RTS kinda takes over most of the game. This wouldn't be so bad if both mechanics had a little more depth to them, or the marketing was a little more honest about the gameplay. Seriously, Jack Black in a game is amazing, but you can't have a full sandwich without the fillings double fine. Regardless, we still get a unique product made with a lot of care that tragically got overlooked as time went on. Thankfully, it was put on Steam in 2013, and I definitely recommend it. Whether you like the genre or not, you're definitely in for one hell of a show. As I said earlier, Halo was the FPS series of the 2000s and early 2010s, and with any successful product, competition will arise trying to be their killer, rarely living up to that title. During the aforementioned period, we saw two Sony franchises attempting to dethrone Halo, Killzone and Resistance. Heck, the original Resistance was even a launch title for the PS3. Both of these franchises clearly took cues from what made Halo a hit. They took place in a futuristic setting, had a focus on story and the single-player campaign, and extensive multiplayer options. Eventually, though, both Killzone and Resistance ran out of steam and more or less died out. With Killzone, there is reason to believe a new game is on the horizon, but Resistance hasn't seen anything other than some occasional posts from the developer. Both of these series do have a chance for a comeback, but there's no denying that Sony has clearly moved on to other titles in this day and age. In the end, what caused both of these franchises to fade away into irrelevance was, fittingly enough, the thing that they made their names off of to begin with: their console exclusivity. Compare this to the other huge FPS series that was gaining popularity, Call of Duty. Call of Duty, being on multiple consoles as well as PC, was much more appealing, and it quickly found itself outclassing its competitors once the 2010s came along.
And then there's Haze.
You okay?
We don't talk about Haze.
Oy, the poor misunderstood Wii. The console itself is amazing, but its library of games, more than a little lackluster. Don't get me wrong, they were capable of producing some great titles and ports, it's just that a majority of them were from their own company. Third-party games, on the other hand, are a bit of a gamble, since at worst they end up either being really broken ports or games that didn't even make an attempt to be good. However, there are still the little diamonds in the rough that tried. They really tried. They tried to bring some much-needed recognition to the console, but didn't have that much weight to them. The ones I really want to bring up, I'll keep it short but pithy about what made each of them great. Zack and Wiki was a fun little adventure that helped utilize the point-and-click genre to the console, but it sadly didn't rake in many sales worldwide. Red Steel 2 offered some amazing sword and gunplay that really lets you get a feel to the motion control's potential, but a few lag issues in the motion control market deprived it of any hope of making a sequel. The Conduit was proof that first-person shooters could work great with the Wii, which greatly compensates the bland story. The Blob is pure, untainted fun that really takes advantage of the Wii controls, plot or no plot. After they patched up a few bugs in development, Pandora's Tower managed to hold its own in terms of story and combat, which is more than people could say for the control schemes and graphics. Then there's A Boy and His Blob, a cute, heartwarming title that was eventually ported to current-gen consoles with next to no fanfare. Sin and Punishment's star successor was like diving headfirst into an action flick with weapons ablaze in this acclaimed sequel to the original N64 title, and almost played like a precursor to Kid Icarus Uprising. And as one of the console's last great RPGs, The Last Story really brought its A-game with its impressive combat system and some stunning graphics. Finally, last but not least, Muramasa the Demon Blade. While it thrived more on the Vita, let's not forget its place of origin and how it dazzled us with its fast-paced 2D aesthetics. Quick fun fact about two of these, Last Story and Pandora's Tower were both released in the West due to the same campaign that gave us Xenoblade Chronicles. While all three were well received, Xenoblade kinda ended up completely overshadowing the other two by quite a bit, and, well, we already know how that story ends. We can make fun of the Wii's lack of a solid library until the cows come home, but it doesn't change the fact that they were bold enough to keep trying and managed to land a few hidden gems. Unfortunately, the little games that could slowly faded away with the console. Although, with so many games being ported to the Switch, there could be a slight glimmer of hope that they could make a comeback.
All it takes is a subtle nudge to really drive home the message.
You have the subtlety of an F-1 fighter jet on an Amish farm, dear.
Legend of Dragoon, a great cinematic experience that kind of walked the line between too inconsequential and too precise. Condemned franchise. Oh, Spore, you know you can make sequels, right? Vanquish, the world just isn't ready for robot dance parties. LA Noire, didn't really offer too much power to the player, but hey, got a Switch re-release, so maybe it'll bounce back? Jet Set Radio, fighting the system one act of vandalism at a time. And another title buried deep in Sega's non-Sonic vault. Ratchet & Clank Remake. 2016 was not a good year for Ratchet & Clank. First the movie bombs, then barely anyone touches the game. Demon Ex Machina. This one might be a little too soon to be forgotten, but the reviews and lack of discourse are not doing it any favors.
Remember how excited we were when this place opened? Then a week later, we just forgot about it.
There's a lot to be said about first-person shooters, least being a lot of people think it's a tired and stale genre. Whatever your opinion, Respawn Entertainment decided to throw its hat into the ring with its first game, Titanfall, a first-person shooter where you got to ride around in giant mechs. There was a lot of hype around this release, so much that it took 60 awards at E3 2013. But ultimately, it failed in a few too many aspects, notably the complete absence of any kind of single-player campaign. Then, to some surprise, Titanfall 2 was announced. Everything from the previous game was upgraded. There was a story mode, the progression system was overhauled, balance tweaks were made, the marketing for this game was everywhere as well. Up to release, you couldn't look anywhere on the internet without seeing advertisements for the thing. And upon release, critics seemingly adored this new polish of what could be charitably called a fair idea with poor execution. So why is it on the list? Admit it, you completely forgot Titanfall was a thing before I reminded you. Commercially, Titanfall 2 met with surprisingly poor sales figures. Most of this is attributed to coming out in the same window as Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, as well as the general public not being aware that the game was multi-platform and not exclusive. In all honesty, it really makes me sad to see what happened to this game. There are a lot of good ideas in Titanfall 2 that couldn't save it from obscurity. Poor release timing, the shadow of the first game looming over it, and a misguided ad campaign meant few people picked up the game to begin with. Then it just got lost in the mire of generic first-person shooter. There is one ray of sunshine showing through the sorry tale. Respawn Entertainment took what they learned from the Titanfall games and created Apex Legends, a fairly popular battle royale game. It's even set in the same universe as Titanfall. Sometimes you just have to take the wins where you can get them.
I'm the Fiery Joker, and
Remember Lego Island? Oh, I remember. Oh, remember Enslaved Odyssey to the West? Oh, I remember.
I should really get rid of those before they go stale.
Cut!
Hey everyone, this is Josh. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Please check out my other social media like my Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr. Consider checking below the video and donating to my Patreon, Streamlabs for my merchandise, or becoming a YouTube member, and you'll get rewards like this. Our named shoutouts come from Ryan Anderson, Sonic Cody, and Misty Phantom. Thanks for watching.